So, but today we are continuing in our stories about the life of Jonathan, and it's actually, I initially thought it'd be about 6 weeks, but we're going to take one more week after this because there's just too much for me to share. I just love the story of Jonathan, and as many of you know, that's why my son Jonathan is named Jonathan, because I love the story of Jonathan. Okay, I love Joshua too, but it's the different thing. All right, so I don't love Jonathan more because he has the name Jonathan. All right, this just put it that way. So anyway, we're in that, and today we're going to talk about true friendship, and we're going to continue on a little bit talking about those friendship dynamics that we talked about last week, and give you a few more, and then we're going to talk about the application of them. But if you need the sermon notes and you want to go to the YouVersion sermon notes, there is the QR code for it, or you can go to YouVersion, go down to the bottom and look for events and then search, and it should pop up on your screen about it. Now, you will notice that when you open that up, it says September 29th, 2025. I'm just planning ahead, all right? No, I just got it wrong. And I often do that, get things wrong, but it is today, September 29th, 2024, not 2025. So just keep that in mind. All right, so a couple of weeks ago, we started talking about Jonathan and David and their friendship, and we talked about their kindred friends and how they were drawn together with things. And we read this verse, 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 1. It says, and David finished talking to Saul. Jonathan and David became bound together in close friendship. And Jonathan loved David as much as he did his own life. And he did that because they were such kindred friends. They thought alike. They acted alike. They perceived God alike. They perceived how God was in their life the same. All sorts of different things. And we went through. And we said, because they're kindred spirits, where did that come from? And we went through the stories. Jonathan and the armor bearer versus David and Goliath, and how we can find similar things in both stories. Okay, we found the Israelite army afraid of the Philistine army, scared, hiding, didn't know what to do, and nobody leading them and going. And then we found leaders, both in Jonathan and David, who had the confidence in God to rescue, to God to provide, for God to protect. They both knew that if it was God's will that they defeat the Philistine armies, or Goliath or the Philistine armies, whichever one you want to apply it to, they knew if it's God's will for them to do it, it would happen. It didn't matter what the odds. It didn't matter what they were against. And so they placed their faith in God, not in their weapons, not in their abilities, not in anything else. But we did say both of them did have abilities. Okay? Jonathan was a marksman with the bow and arrow. Okay, he was a master archer. David, as we know from the story of David and Goliath, the slingshot was probably his favorite weapon. Okay, so they were both skillful, but they relied on God. Okay, and they were both leaders who didn't take the credit themselves, didn't say, "Oh, look at me, I'm so great, I'm so wonderful, I'm able to do this, I'm able to lead the people." But they always pointed back toward God and said, "God is the reason we had the victory. God is the reason things were successful. God is the reason that we're here and we're doing what we're doing. It is all because of God." So they continually gave God the credit. And they were both leaders, too, who took action. They just didn't think about, well, yes, God can give us victory. David didn't sit there and go, man, I can win over Goliath. Okay, I can win over Goliath. I can win over Goliath. No, what did he do? He took action. First of all, he spoke up and said, hey, who's going to go fight this giant? Nobody said anything. David said, hey, I'm going to go fight the giant. What can happen for me? Then he went and he did it. And in the story, and we didn't read this part of the story, but remember that Saul gave him all his armor, and David put all the armor on to go fight the giant. And David's like, hey, this armor is too heavy. I can't move with this. And it's God who's going to give me the victory. So he took all the armor off. Then it says when he went out into the battlefield and he saw Goliath, he ran toward him. That's someone taking action. When Jonathan and the armor bearer were down in the bottom of the valley, and that garrison of 20 men up there said, hey, come on up here, what did they do? They didn't stop and pray about it for 3 days. They immediately took off, climbing that hill cliff. That side is quickly as they could, probably on all fours because of how steep it was, because they recognized that God was going to give them the victory. So they were leaders who took action. And then they were leaders who inspired others. Jonathan and armor bearer, we know that the whole army got confidence. They chased the Philistines. Even other tribes of Judah or Israel started joining them to chase the Philistines, and they plundered the Philistines. Same thing happened with David and Goliath. When they saw that Goliath was slain, that David had killed him, cut his head off, the troops rallied and went and chased the Philistines well and plundered them as well. So things that God used to inspire others. And then we said this, leaders God used to do good. And if you look at both those stories, you will see that in the end, Israel was much better off because of what God had done. And God did that because of these leaders. And God is waiting for you and I to do things at times. He's saying, hey, I want to do great things, but I want you to be a part of it. See, that's one of the things I love about God, but I have to tell you this, sometimes one of those things where I'm like, God, can't you just do it yourself? But God says, I want you involved because I want you to participate in this so that you can receive the blessing of it, so that you can receive the good rewards of it and the good things of it. And when we see God at work, or when we see what God wants us to do and we do that, and then we see how God works through that, there's no other kind of feeling like that. It's a great, great feeling. So good things that happen in those leaders. And then we talked about Jonathan. We talked about how he was a warrior. He was a natural leader. He's brave and loyal, depending on God. In these last few weeks, how he's close friend to David and considered God and others first. And we talked about these character qualities, and these are the same things he saw in David as well. And all this led to that kindred friendship, okay? And then we started going through the friendship dynamics last week. We started looking at their friendship. What are some of the things, characteristics of their friendship, some of the dynamics? And we said that first thing was the connection, that kindred spirit. Then the sacrificial element of it. Jonathan especially being willing to sacrifice his future as the king. You know, he was the king apparently. He was the one who should have been king. But he knew that David was anointed, and he was willing to sacrifice that. Both of them willing to sacrifice their lives, willing to protect each other, defend each other, and support each other is where we ended with. And then this week, we got three more things. The first thing is that when you talk about good friends and good friendships, then friends encourage each other. Okay? I got a text message from a friend this week in the U.S. asking me about something, and I shared my response. And they said, well, you know, it was something not so good. But they text me back and said, well, sorry to hear that. We'll continue to pray for you. Okay? Now, don't get worried. It's nothing, you know, but it was a little bit of something they knew about. That's what friends do. They encourage each other. Look what happened here. David, remember David in the course of chapters 18, 19, and 20, David's life is threatened many, many, many times, and you'll see throughout the rest of 1 Samuel that Saul continues to threaten his life, and so far it's been about 6 to 8 times that David's life has been threatened, all the way from Saul throwing spears at him to Saul trying to arrange a marriage to his daughter so that David have to go do things so that David will get killed in a war, all sorts of things, to the actual commanding of Jonathan and everyone to go kill David. All that. So David's starting to feel a little bit of, Saul doesn't like me, you know? I think you and I would feel the same way, right? Sometimes when someone keeps saying negative things to you, you begin to wonder, does this person really like me or not? Or does this person hate me? So David was feeling that way, and he had fled from Saul again, and Saul tried to kill him. Said he fled from Noah to Ramah. He came to Jonathan and asked, what have I done? What is my offense? How have I sinned before your father? For he is seeking my life. David's saying, help me understand. Encourage me. Teach me. Look what Jonathan's response said to him, by no means are you going to die. So Jonathan first addresses what David didn't say. Because David was saying, if you go back and look at all that, David's basically saying, I'm going to die. I can't survive this any longer. I can't take this any longer. You go, I can't deal with my workmates anymore. I can't deal with this person. I can't deal with these things in life. I'm gonna die. No, you will not die. By no means. In other words, Jonathan's saying, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure nothing happens to you. My Father does nothing small, or actually large or small, without making me aware of it. Why my Father hide this matter from me? It just won't happen. Now, was Jonathan living in denial? He was there when Saul threw his spears at David. He was there when Saul commanded everyone to kill David. So I don't think he was in denial, but what I think Jonathan was basically saying is, hey, you've got an inside person. You have somebody that knows everything that's going on, and I'm telling you, it's going to be okay. Because I will share with you. I will tell you. Remember already when we looked at those other things last week about how they defend supports, that he already told him already, he protected him about, hey, my father's going to try to kill you. So he's saying, hey, I'm there for you, okay? You can rest and know you have a friend in me. You have someone to support you. You have someone to back you up. You have someone that has your back. So he encourages David. And then we have this idea of loyalty. Look at these next couple of verses. We skip down to verse 4 here. It says, Jonathan replied to David, said, tell me what I can do for you. Now, in the way this is said, in the way that we read all the rest of these verses around these, in these couple of chapters, what we're seeing is Jonathan saying, I'm loyal to you. Yes, it's my father that's trying to kill you, but I'm there for you. What can I do for you? Look at the next verse. Far be it from me to suggest this if I were all aware that my father's decided to harm you. Wouldn't I tell you about it? David, I am loyal to you. I don't care what happens, I'm there for you. I'm loyal to you. David said to Jonathan, who will tell me if your father answers harshly? Jonathan said to David, come, let's go out to the field. And the two of them had gone out into the field. Now, this is something that I always kind of passed over, but I kind of realized this week as I was looking at this that what he did to David, and he's trying to protect him, he's trying to encourage him, trying to support him. And he said, let's go out to the field. Why did they go out to the field? Privacy. He said, let's you and I go somewhere and talk where it's just you and I talking so that nobody else hears, so that we can make sure our plans succeed. That's how loyal he was. Do you think Saul had eyes on them? Do you think Saul was watching Jonathan? Yeah, I think so. Because Saul knew about Jonathan's relationship with David. So he's got that loyalty, and then he's got the respect of David to say, let's go out to the field. And here's what he said. It said, the Lord God of my witness, or the Lord God of Israel is my witness. I will fill out my father about this time the day after tomorrow. If he's favorably inclined toward David, then I will not send word to you to let you know. David, I really don't think your life's in danger right now, but I'm hearing you. So out of my respect for you, I will go check this out. Do you see that? See, there's a respect element there. And look what he goes on and says, if my father intends to do you harm, may the Lord do all this and more to Jonathan. Okay? And he's saying, hey, look, I'm there for you. I'm this type of friend. You have my respect. You have my loyalty. I'm encouraging you. If it happens, if it's going to happen, then let it happen to me. If I don't let you know and send word to you, if I don't let you know and send word to you so you can go away safely on your way, may the Lord be with you as he was with my father. Notice that, as he was with my father. He has great respect for David because he knows that God is with David. He knows that God is no longer with his father. Remember all the things that his father has done to lose the favor of God, the favor of Israel, the favor of Jonathan, the favor of Samuel the prophet. And he recognizes that Saul is no longer following God, that Saul is no longer seeking God, but David is, and he respects David highly for that. While I'm still alive, extend me the loyalty of the Lord, or else I will die. David, you're going to become king. My respect is for you. Out of respect for me, protect me and my family. Don't ever cut off your loyalty to my family, not even when the Lord has cut off every one of David's enemies from the face of the earth. Because normally what happened, if you became king, especially if you were the new king in that line, I don't know how to say that any better. Saul was king, Jonathan should have been king, but now David's going to be king. What would most kings do? They would destroy Saul's family, all his relatives, all his, everybody, anybody. You know, even those faithful to him that aren't his relatives, they would destroy them because they didn't want them to rise up again. And Jonathan's saying, out of respect, I'm asking you to do this. And because I know you respect me, I know you'll do it. He doesn't say that directly, but he has that type of idea. And so this is where we get a picture of true friendship, because we have all these friendship characteristics, all these friendship dynamics. But when we place them in, it no longer becomes a dynamic, but it becomes something we do. So when we place them into our life. And so that's what we see. True friendship happens when all these things prevail in our life. Okay? When you see a connection with somebody, when you're willing to sacrifice for that person, protect that person, provide for that person, defend them, support them, encourage and be loyal to them, when you respect them, then you have a true friendship. And that's what we see in the rest of this chapter, in chapter 20. Okay? Going to read a lot of verses to you. I'm not going to talk too much about it. I just want to go look at the story and think about their friendship. So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, may the Lord call David's enemies to account. And Jonathan had David reaffirm his oath of love for him because he loved him as much as he did himself. They knew they were parting ways. And they said, let's part ways on the best of terms. Let's renew our oath. Let's celebrate our kindredship, our friendship, and let's move on from there. Then the next verses, verse 18, Jonathan said to David, tomorrow is a new moon feast. You will be missed because your seat will be empty. The day after tomorrow toward evening, go to the place where you hid when this trouble began and wait by the stone. Okay? He's taken all those things and putting them into place. His kindredship, his commitment, his loyalty, all those things. I can list them all again. He's putting them into place here. The feast happens. David's not there. Jonathan gives the excuse. Next day, the feast happens again. David's still not there. Jonathan gives the excuse. And Saul gets really angry. Okay? But before he did this, here's what Jonathan told him. I will shoot 3 arrows to the side of the stone you're hiding, as though I were shooting a target. Then I will send a boy and go find the arrows. If I say to him, look where the arrows are, look, the arrows on this side of you, bring them here, then come, because surely as the Lord lives, you are safe. There is no danger. But if I say to the boy, look, the arrows are beyond you, then you must go, because the Lord has sent you away. So as I said, he did this. They set this up. The place where you were troubled before, because even though they're out in the field, he's still trying to protect David. He's not 100% sure there's nobody listening. So David knew where he was talking about. So he said, go to that place. They go to the banquet, like I said. First day, David didn't show up. Saul made an excuse. Second day, David didn't show up. Jonathan made an excuse. Jonathan made another excuse. And then Saul was very angry. Then here's what it says in verse 23. It says, a matter about you and I discussed. Remember, the Lord is a witness between me and you forever. Now we're going to get to the verse I wanted to say. When we talk about this verse, this again, just reminding themselves of their covenant. Saul's anger flared up at Jonathan. He said to him, "You son of a perverse and rebellious woman. Don't you know that I have sided, or don't I know that you have sided with the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of the mother who bore you? As long as the son of Jesse lives on earth, neither you or your kingdom will be established. Now send someone to bring him to me, for he must die." You remember Jonathan was willing to sacrifice everything? It's not only his kingdom. He's now got his own father cursing him and going against him. And it's not because of his friend David. It's because of Jonathan's loyalty and friendship to God. Because remember, Jonathan was not about himself. He was about what God wanted. Okay? He could have controlled the narrative. He could have changed things. He could have made himself the most important part of this story. But as we sang a while ago, he made God the center of the story. He made Jesus the center of the story. And because of that, his father was mad at him, cursed him, still trying to get him to bring Jonathan or David to him to be killed. Then Jonathan defends him again and shows his support for his friend. Why should he be put to death? What has he done? Jonathan asked his father, but Jonathan hurled his spear at him to kill him. Then Jonathan knew that his father intended to kill David. You see, I also think Jonathan, because of his love for God, because of his wanting the best in everything, was one of those people that always saw hope, always had a reason for the hope that was within him. And I still think he was still hoping Saul would change again. That Saul would become that Saul who in the first part of Samuel, who when he was first told he would be king, who was really humble and said, no, I can't be king, I can't lead the people. To the Saul who shortly after that, 2 or 3 years after that, saw how the Israelite people were being mistreated and abused, and how the power and the Spirit of God rose up within him, and he went out and he conquered the Philistines and delivered Israel. See, I think Jonathan was still hoping that would happen. But at this point, he realized it didn't. He realized finally that his father would kill David no matter what. Jonathan got up from the table in fierce anger. Was he angry at his dad throwing his spear at him? Well, I'm sure. But he was more angry because he knew Saul wasn't following God. On that second day of the feast, he did not eat because he was grieved at his father's shameful treatment of David. And we're going to go on. Skip on down to verse 41. They go out to the field. Jonathan shoots the arrows out, shoots them beyond. He calls out, says, they're a little bit further. David knew that meant he was not safe. So then Jonathan dismisses the boy that go fetch the arrows, tell him to go home, tell him to take his bow and arrow, everything, go home, which is normal. Didn't think much about it. Then David came out. He said, David got up from the south side of the stone and bowed down before Jonathan 3 times. That's a sign of respect. That's a sign of loyalty. That's a sign of how I feel, my true friendship towards you. It says, with his face to the ground, it says they kissed each other and wept loudly, but David wept the most. Why? Just like you and I, whenever we experience separation, whether it be because of death or because we're moving or distance or whatever else, we're sad. Because that relationship is a strength for both of them. I think they fed off each other. I think when they went out to battle and David took his thousands and Jonathan took his 1,000 and they went out to battle and and there was probably a camaraderie, maybe even a little bit of a rivalry there, kind of person to person going, yeah, hey, this is what God did, this is what God did. And they fed off each other and they helped each other. And they knew their ways were going to split apart. And they hoped for the future, but right now, so they were sad because they both liked each other so much and both supported each other so much. Then Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, for we have sworn friendship with each other in the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord is a witness between you and me, between your descendants and my descendants forever." Then David left, and Jonathan went back to town. So good. What a true friendship can be. And so good about how true friendship can encourage you, support you, help you. And when we look at true friendships and we look about who our friends are, we have friends here. But one thing that Scripture is clear on is that Jesus can be our true friend. And I said can be our true friend because often we say Jesus is your true friend. But Jesus is only our true friend if we choose our friendship with him. Because I want you to look at this. Okay, I'm not going to read all these verses to you, but look at these verses. True friendship, a connection. And I could have probably listed 10 verses on each one of these things. I just kind of put the ones that were my favorites. And when there was 2 verses, that means I couldn't decide which one was my favorite one. Okay? Look at these things. The connection. It's there. The Luke verse says, he reaches out to us and brings us in. He wants us to be part of his family, part of his kingdom. Sacrificial. John 3:17, Jesus did not come into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world. Okay? Protects. That 2 Thessalonians verse actually says, in one English translation, that God protects us and provides for us and supports us, defends us. Psalms 28. Deuteronomy 20 verse 4 about his support. John 16:33 about he encourages. 2 Thessalonians 3:3 about God is loyal to us, about God is faithful to us, which is part of loyalty. Respect. Deuteronomy chapter 30 verse 15 and Joshua 25:25. Both those verses talk about basically for us today we need to choose who we will serve. And see, you don't give somebody a choice unless you respect that person. And God says, I have created you for a relationship with me, but I respect you so much, I give you the choice. And it's not only a choice about salvation, but it's a choice on a daily basis. What are you going to choose? Are you going to choose me over the things of this world? Those are things that are our respect. Look at John. What he writes here. This is John 15, starting in verse 9. It says this, "As a Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will remain in my love, just as I kept my Father's commandments and remain in his love." Again, he's saying, hey, you've got a choice. Follow my commandments. Choose me. Then look at these next few verses, because I think these are so great verses. "I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be" what? Complete. That you can have true joy, because that's what a true friend wants for each other. "My command is this, love each other as I have loved you." And then verse 13, "Greater love has this," and then I've memorized another translation. Let me read it out of this translation. "Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command." And he's saying that's the ultimate test of friendship. Are you willing to sacrifice? And he said, I'm willing to sacrifice for you, Jesus said. And you are my friends if you do what I command. You no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Father I have made known to you. Jesus is and can be our greatest friend if we're willing to choose him, if we're willing to follow his commands, to declare our love for him, to declare our commitment to him. True friendship. Jesus modeled it for us. But remember last week I said this is not about what you see in other people. This is about what you see in yourself. What kind of friend are you to God? What kind of friend are you to the people around you? Your family, your coworkers. As I said last week, the person on the bus that you see, the person walking down the street. We can be great friends with others. People need us to be great friends because we all need each other. That's why we meet as a church. If our relationship with God is only about us and God, we would have no purpose to meet together. But God says that we should meet together. It says in Thessalonians, it says, do not give up meeting together. For what reason? So that we can encourage each other and help each other out, because that's what friends do. Let's go to God in prayer.